What's going on, everyone? It's Sean from Barbell Built Body, and today we're talking strength training for endurance cyclists. I'm going to walk you through how to periodize an annual plan for strength training in the weight room to transfer to your cycling performance. Let's get to it. Throw up a graph in a second. This is from a project, an assignment actually for one of my courses, and this was basically creating a situation and then designing a training program. So this is supposedly based on a Cat 2 cyclist planning on upgrading this year and targeting crit national championships. But I want to walk through the graph because if you say, well, that's not applicable to me, it is, because I'm gonna walk through and show you how to adjust things, because it's all the periodization techniques are going to be similar pretty much regardless. There's individualization obviously that can go off of this, and how you program each individual section is going to differ depending on the athlete, but the same general theme should be applied. So I'm going to flip to that graph, and I want you to look, draw your attention to the endurance periodization and strength. There's a lot on this graph. That's where we're going to be focusing, or chart I should say. That's where we're going to be focusing. And so I'm going to pull that up and just voice over discussing, walking through exactly what a year in the weight room looks like accompanying your cycling training.
All right, so I know this chart or table or whatever you want to call it is kind of overwhelming. There's a lot on here. We're going to be focusing the main thing on, if you see on the very left, periodization. Just to the right of that, it says training phase, and below that you see strength and endurance. That is where we're primarily going to be focusing during this discussion. And then I want to draw your attention also to the top where it says months. So this basically starts exactly at the end of the last competitive season. So season ends, you move into transition period. Transition is basically an active recovery of 1 to 3 weeks normally, where you're still training, but on the bike training is probably very minimal. And then strength training, you can begin with some light workouts, but you really don't start really pushing hard until general prep again. But either way, so in the anatomical adaptation phase, so if you look next to strength, we see AA, max strength, strength power conversion, and maintenance. So this is the flow of strength training throughout the competitive season. This is how it'll look. These timelines are fluid, but the flow from anatomical adaptation to max strength to strength power conversion to maintenance, or if you are you use a maintenance program if you are trying to stay very fit for a long period of time. You would go to a peak program if you are peaking for one single event. Keep in mind that every peak cycle you basically run through anatomical adaptation, or starting at max strength to a strength power conversion to a peak. You can only true peak up to 3 times a year. The rest of it, which I will draw your eyes down right below periodization, says peaking index. If you notice, peaking index of 2 means you're in good race condition. You're only a few % off your true peak performance. So keep that in mind, because I think people think that they're way out of shape. And during the off season, if you're extremely competitive and you're an elite athlete, yes, you're probably far from your peak, or your basically peaking index of 2, which means you're ready to race. You're just not getting the extra 3 to 5% from a peak. So anatomical adaptation. During this time, the bike volume may be high, maybe low, at least initially starting. And then as soon as you hit general prep, probably a lot of base miles, or building that endurance capacity. So while your intensity on the bike is lower, those glycolytic efforts, those harder efforts, are going to be done in the gym. So during this anatomical adaptation, this is going to be your sets of 8 to 20 reps, and really focusing on lower body, 2 to maximum of 3 days a week in the weight room. As a cyclist, no time in the year should be over 3 days a week if your goal is strictly performance. on the bike. There's no need to be in the gym ever more than 3 days a week. But we're going to be targeting lower body. And this is kind of the traditional, what people think of the hypertrophy, muscular endurance, off-season weightlifting. But most people stop after this. So they do a few months of this, season comes around, they stop. That is not what you want to do. So the research actually shows that you will detrain and lose whatever kind of benefits you got from resistance training, you will lose within about 8 weeks. So you don't want to do that. So as your intensity is lower on the bike during this time, you're kind of doing those higher volumes, what I would say glycolytic efforts in the gym. So now as you move into specific prep and you start a max strength cycle, now we're trying to drive those numbers up. We're starting to pick basically, squat or leg press as a dominant exercise, and we're trying to drive those numbers up. So a lot of this time we're spent 85%, or at least over 80, ideally over 85, and we're trying to drive that strength up. So now we're talking closer into that, 3 to 5 rep range. So we sit there. Once again, these timelines are very fluid. So while the max strength phase might last 2.5 months in this athlete, that doesn't mean it has to last that long for you, depending on how your season, your events line up throughout the year. But that flow from anatomical adaptation to max strength is the same. Timelines are going to be different. And exactly how you program those, how you program to achieve max strength is going to be different. So as we move from max strength then, so we're building that strength, trying to drive those numbers up, we're then moved to a strength power conversion. Now at this time, there's a few ways I suggest programming, or a few ways I think you can program, I guess, and depending on the cyclist, the needs, this is where it's kind of the individualization with working with an athlete can vary. But I think you can do it in the weight room. And once again, once you hit the max strength phase, let me go back real quick, 2 days a week is all you should be in the weight room. And also during all this time, we're primarily focused on lower body. During the anatomical adaptation phase, you can do some full body, but the research for cycling performance focuses on exercises that focus exclusively on the lower body. So for performance, we're looking at lower body exercises. We're talking squats, leg press. You can do single leg press, step ups, lunges, Bulgarian split squats, calf raises, box jumps. I mean, anything lower body is what we want to focus on those. So flexion or extension of the hip, flexion and extension of the knee, and plantar flexion of the ankle. The muscles used for cycling: glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves. So, sorry, I got a little bit off topic there. So back to where we were. So as we go from max strength to strength power conversion, how I would program the strength power conversion, like I said, it can vary, but I recommend continue to work on strength, because I think that is the key for cyclists. And then for your power, you would be sprinkling in some sprints on the bike. So we want to get that strength portion, that slower speed, real true muscular strength in the gym. And then on the bike, now we're translating that strength into power. So you can be doing a variety of 5 to 10 second intervals up to 30-second intervals. So now you're getting that anaerobic work. And if you can see right below it, you see anaerobic under the endurance column. So we're starting to stress that glycolytic system on the bike. So doing those high intensity intervals there. I think that's a good way to do it. You can also do some complex training, which means you do something like a heavy squat or heavy leg press and pair it with something like plyometrics, like box jumps. That's another way to produce power. You can also be doing true power training where you're using loads between like 30% and 80% of your 1RM. So this is very variable on how you can program, and options are limitless. I mean, options are kind of limitless in every one of these sections, but so that is how I recommend there. This is the last time as you finish the strength power conversion, you'll then move to either a peaking cycle where your volume drops, or you move to a maintenance cycle. So if you're peaking for an event, what you would basically do is have the intensity extremely high, volume for the exercises very low. So you're doing, you might go in, do a couple of sets of squats to hit that strength, and then you're out. So once again, peaking, we're not really going to dive into that right now. 1 to 4 weeks for peaking. But like I said, don't really want to walk through exactly our peak. The main thing is, if you peak, you may pull out resistance training, depending on your event, altogether about a week out. Once again, depends on the athlete, depends on the event. For a maintenance phase, this is crucial to where you have to continue lifting. So during this phase, 1 day a week, so once every 7 to 10 days, has been shown to maintain strength for about 15 weeks. So that's 3.5 months. It's a solid competitive season. And you have to be in there hitting about 85% or more of your 1RM, so of your max, on a core exercise such as the leg press or the squat. You have to maintain that strength, but you get in, you do a couple exercises, you hit your 85% or above, maybe do a couple assistant exercises, and you're done. Boom, you're on the bike. Training is what's dominating. You don't want to be spending a bunch of time in the weight room. So during this time too, right under endurance, you see sport-specific endurance. All that means is, in the example of somebody who's racing crits, they might be doing variable now, combining different aerobic and anaerobic intensities on the bike, from sprints to VO2 max to lactate threshold. You got to get good at what the sport requires, exactly the demands of what you're going to be experiencing. So with that comes, like I said, a decrease, obviously, in strength training. Strength training during the season takes a back burner. I mean, you're talking 1 day a week. And then the focus on the bike is getting really good at whatever the event you're competing in is demanding. So I hope this is helpful, but that is how you program a year or periodize an annual plan for a cyclist throughout the year. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. I'd love to help you guys out. Let me know if you have any questions. Talk soon.